Well, welcome everyone. We are so excited that you're here. We have a very special guest for you, Jenny Black. And Jenny is a licensed marriage and family therapist who specializes in how media impacts our mental health. She is an author of Our Digital Soul and a creator of Lose the Phone, a podcast series and movement that supports humans as they heal from media addiction and trauma, and they learn to engage in their real lives and their digital lives from a place of wholeness. I am so excited to get into this topic with you. Please welcome to the show, Jenny Black. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I am just thrilled to be here.
Well, I am so happy that you are here as well. And I just kind of want to start people off with your journey of going down this phone addiction route. There was a 30-day challenge, 30 days without phones. Just bring us back to where this all started for you and where you're at now.
Yeah. So about 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago now, I actually I was dealing with burnout and depression, anxiety, all the normal things now. And had two teenage kids, so they were dealing with all their stuff. And I tried to take a sabbatical just to get like, okay, I just need to, do the work that I was doing with my clients, recalibrate, whatever. And basically found that I truly could not take a sabbatical. I could not get the rest that I needed because of my phone. And so I was managing my phone all day, right? Even though I wasn't working and I quit all of like volunteer stuff and everything, I still was managing people and information all the time. And one day my phone didn't start. My phone broke. And it was like such an amazing day that I didn't fix it for 30 days. And they were the best 30 days of my whole life. And at the end of those 30 days, I was like, well, I guess I've got to get back to real life. And got my phone fixed and immediately went back to like just the drudgery of daily life. And I thought, okay, this is just life. I had a nice little vacation and that was wonderful. And then 3 months later, my phone got stolen. And that same day, I had the immediate, like instantly, like depression lifting, anxiety, like it was like, oh my gosh, this is actually about my phone. So up until that point, it didn't occur to me. I almost saw everything that came through my phone was sort of like adulting. It was just all the stuff you had to deal with. And that day I was like, I've been dealing with all this hard, real stuff in real life, and it does not make me feel the way this makes me feel. So that's when I was just dedicated. I lived without any type of phone for 4 years at that point. And I was determined to prove that there was a way that you could live without it. Oh. And for two reasons. One, I never wanted to live that way again. Like once you taste getting to live free, to go back to that was just not an option. But then the other side was I have to prove that it's possible.
Yeah.
Like everyone keeps saying there's no way you can live without that. And I'm going to find out.
Wow. Well, first off, that phone breaks. There's no other way to put it. That's a God moment right there. That first time, that 30 days, the phone gets stolen. Like that's a God moment. And I mean, it's incredible. And to think, I think one of the obvious things that I hear all the time, because we deal with people who are going through porn addiction, people who are on their phone all the time. And one of the most easiest things that they always bring up is, well, I need it for work. Well, I need it for all the practical things. I need my Facebook because this, and I need my Instagram because, and so what do you say to those people? How did you make it through those times? What are just some practical tips that they can put in place?
First of all, I actually had to pay money for my stolen phone because the contract wasn't up yet. So I had to write a check to whatever my cell service was. Like I paid money to get done and out. It is not, I mean, the question that every person has to ask themselves is, do you like your life? When you wake up in the morning, are you excited to get out of bed? Are you looking forward to what you have to do today, who you're going to get to see? Do you have relationships and books and a hobby or a project that you're working on that are bringing you fulfillment? If you have those things, then this isn't a conversation for you. You have figured out how to integrate, your technology into your daily life, and you're thriving. And those are people definitely worth studying, but very, very, very hard to find. So the first thing, oh goodness, I don't even know where to start with this. My mind went so fast. The first thing I want to say is it's the alcohol of the 50s, right? If you're thinking about like Mad Men, and those days, no one was allowed to admit that you had a drinking problem. Meant you were going to lose your job. You weren't going to be able to do the be in on the deals, right? That you were drinking everywhere, and it was kind of a weakness. It was perceived as a weakness. And so that first generation of people who said that they had a problem, that where AA started, they had significant losses with their society, basically. And most people would not have made that choice unless they had even more significant losses, like they were going to lose their job, right? It's the rock bottom. They were going to lose their family. They weren't going to have rights to see their children anymore. And so it's those kinds of losses that made them willing to make the sacrifices of thing. So, I just have so much to say. So one, are you at that point? Does your spouse want to leave you? Do you have good relationships with your children? Do they want to talk to you? Are you thriving at work? Are you productive? What we're seeing is that that's just not the case for anyone. One, let's go back to the alcohol connection. How many recovering alcoholics do you think that we would have if they carried around a flask of alcohol in their pocket all the time? How many? What's your guess, Emmanuel?
Zero.
So to expect someone who's had a problem with porn to recover from a porn addiction and still have 24/7 access to it at all times means we're going to have 0% recovery in this area. And if you have, if anything, right? If it's your job, if there's something in your life that requires you to be connected to something that is harming you, then probably it's time to do something different.
Well, I think, you brought up something really huge. And when we talk about phone addiction, we're talking about being on Instagram too much, Facebook. We're talking about watching too much porn, right? And too much porn is any porn, by the way. You already know that. That's why you're here. But that idea of admitting you have a problem and it being seen as a weakness, no, it is strength. And you are in that first generation of saying, no, this is a problem. We need to stand up to this and we need to move forward from this and learn to live a life without this. And, I think one of the big ones, you talk about hitting the rock bottom. I mean, here's your rock bottom. What does Apple tell you at the end of each week? It says, here's your screen time. It was, 16 hours a day that you were on it and you're on this app and that app and that app. And you brought something up. Do you like your life? And one of our core tenets of our program is just, what are we running from, right? What is the pain that we're running away from and we're soothing it with this thing, right? Whether it's being on Instagram too much, whether it's looking at porn, whatever that thing is. But this is one thing. What's going on in here first that's making us run to this in the first place and deal with that? And one of the things you brought up in your TED Talk that was really interesting, and by the way, if you haven't seen that, I'm putting that in the show notes. Make sure to watch that right after this. But one of the things you brought up in your TED Talk was clients you were seeing in the olden days, they'd say, oh, I have a problem with this. I have a problem with this. But then clients started coming in and they just kind of were like, I don't know where the problem is. I don't understand. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So when we're talking the olden days, we're talking 10 years ago, which is just amazing, right? That things have so drastically changed. No one went to therapy 10 years ago just because everybody needs therapy. No one. They went to therapy because they had a specific problem they were going to deal with. And that's crazy to even say, but that's how it was that short of a time. But as far as the client was concerned, and as far as I was concerned, it was incredibly satisfying work because they got better, right? We had this plan that we worked on together and they got better and they graduated. And then I started seeing clients who didn't know what was wrong, didn't have goals, and weren't getting better. like just staying in this, like, I guess I've got to come back next week. Guess I've got to come back next week. There's so many reasons for that. But one of those things is that I don't know if you talk about this. I just wish I could hear and know every single thing that you know about porn addiction. I really do. And I'm gonna learn everything you tell me to learn. I feel like I have a really special perspective on it because it's never been an issue in my life. So I have zero shame attached to it. But what that allows me as a clinician and a human and a woman, it allows me space to see what it's really done to people and how it's done it. And what we're seeing right now is we're talking about beginning of the internet. Think like MySpace days. That would put someone at maybe say 35. I'm not sure. Let's, in general, that their first exposure to full on access, like that kind of 24/7 access to porn happened in there. That would have been like 12, 13, 14 years old. So what we're actually seeing is a primary attachment figure that came into very vulnerable phases of development and also probably really vulnerable situations. So I am like, my kids did not look at porn until they went to college. And we've talked a lot about why this was, like we didn't have a lot of rules. We had a lot of rules around time on screens, but not really content. And both of them have said they were busy and they were happy, and there was always somebody to be with. And that's a big part of my story, is how available I became to my kids when they were in high school, when I got rid of my phone. And I don't want to say like, that's the reason my kids didn't look at porn, but I've never met a kid who would rather go to porn than have a connected conversation with their parents or play a game or go to dinner, ever. Never. So what we have is basically porn is, I think most of social media and much of the internet is really abusive in its dynamics. It's an abusive relationship that we engage in. And when you have this predator, porn is the ultimate predator that enters into your life as a child or adolescent, that is sexual abuse. That is media trauma. You have been traumatized, controlled, and addicted, and it is not a fair fight. There is not one, let's just for the, maybe 1 out of 1,000 people would resist it. But if you're lonely, you don't have strong attachments with your family, you are feeling left out at school, you don't have somebody to process all of that with, it's the ultimate escape. And it is coming after you. It is not a passive, it's not passive. And so the way that I like to look at porn is not a look at you, you're so bad and you want bad things and you're doing these bad things. The way I look at it is from a lens of trauma and abuse. You have been abused. And this is the way a child who has been sexually abused is processing through the rest of their life. And to me, when you're a parent or a spouse and your child or significant other is dealing with porn, if you can see it through a lens of them having been traumatized and sexually abused, I think it gives a completely different paradigm to be able to care then. And the addiction that then comes from that, right? The addiction that comes from abuse gives you a whole different spirit in which you're like fighting this together as you guys are doing.
Well, so many things you brought up there. First off, your children, just talking about that point, boredom is such a tough thing to deal with. You think about what we do to our worst prisoners. We lock them in a room by themselves. We put them in the hole. You got to sit there and do nothing. Like, and that makes people go crazy. It's actually inhumane many times now. They're kind of outlawing it and in a lot of these things. But you think about as a child, if you got nothing to do and how predatory porn is, it's so easily accessible. I went to the gym the other day and I'm like, how different are these women dressing than what you see online? Like it's just getting crazy to some point. And you think about, if you're a parent listening, imagine you said to your child, hey, the neighbors across the street are having sex and they are okay with you watching. You can go over there. They're not going to do anything weird to you. You can just watch from the sidelines. And, that's how you're going to learn about sex. We would throw that parent in jail, right? We would say, what are you kidding me? You're letting them watch the neighbors and all this stuff. But how different is that from saying you can have this phone that can see anything, see so much more than just your neighbors having sex? And one of the things you brought up is the trauma, the media trauma. You brought up an example of the Boston bomber in your TED Talk. And I think when I listened to that, how people who watched the Boston bombing, the Boston marathoner, they were traumatized. And there's this trauma that goes on with it. And I can think of one scene specifically that I saw when I was first starting to watch porn where, a lot of these websites work just like Instagram. You're scrolling, and, all of a sudden, whoa, I see something that I wasn't expecting to see, or I didn't want to see that. And it's very scary. And then you become less desensitized or more desensitized, which one I'm thinking. And then you're watching more and more. And I just remember one time, not to trigger anyone or to get anyone into whatever, but I just remember one scene and I'm like, I remember seeing a friend the next day. I'm like, yeah, I saw this scene and I saw something I didn't want to see. And he's like, oh yeah, I remember the first time that I saw that. And we're 19, 20. And I'm traumatized from seeing that. And so to think of a child, to talk about that media trauma that we're talking about.
Yeah. So what you're referencing is that we now have data that shows that things that we watch are actually more traumatizing than the real experiences of being in them. That's what happened at the Boston Marathon bombing. And there are several reasons for that. One is we have no context. We have no context. So this is why it was such a big deal. I did not understand this for years, but you remember Mr. Rogers' famous saying after September 11th? He said, my mom always told me that in times of trouble, look for the helpers. So are you familiar with that quote?
I'm not familiar with that quote, but that's a very good thing too.
So it's like, okay, look for the helpers, be a helper, whatever. But I did not understand until I started researching this. What he's saying is when you are in almost any moment of crisis or trauma in real life, there's a very small, like even on September 11th, if you were there, you would have seen thousands of people who were helping. You would have seen the good of humanity at the same time that you were seeing these horrors, right? So what the media has done to us is it has isolated the horrors. And we are only getting to see that the worst parts from these close-up things that actually very few people really have access to. That trauma really only would have affected this many people at the heart of it. So when so I'm from Nashville. We had the Covenant shootings a few months ago. So that I have been in the sort of inner circles of what it's like to be a part of this kind of tragedy. And what I have learned is that the number of people that are first person affected is a very small group. It's a very small group of people. First person meaning sight, sound, physical touch, right? Engaging all of your senses. That's a small group of people. And then you have these like circles from out of there. You have the people who heard it from another room. And then you have the people who got the phone calls. And then you have the parents who got the call, and so you have, if you can sort of see this picture of the trauma happens here, and then there's like these levels. Well, I'm telling you, I'm sure there's research on this, but I'm not telling you from research. I'm telling you like from my experiences with the different people that I've worked with in this. it's, it is, there is less trauma the further out those circles on a very practical level. Now, how cool is it, right, to see that that's the way it's supposed to be? Because the further out of the circles you get, I was pretty far out here, enables me to help the people in the inner circles, right? So I'm obviously devastated by what happened, but I didn't have my senses, my five senses didn't suffer. My children weren't there, right? And so what happens with media is that we have taken the whole world and brought them into that center circle to have them first person traumatized by this event, when really it should have only traumatized 20 or 1,000 or whatever the situation is. And now we sit there and experience, because if we are empathetic human beings, when we see these things, they hurt us. They hurt our bodies. We hurt when other humans hurt. We hurt when animals hurt. Like, this is just the way that God made us, right? So the reason I feel pain when you feel pain is so that I can help you. That's it. Is so that I access my empathy, compassion, and energy to help make you better, right? Bring you food, take you to the hospital, whatever. So when it also sends off, anytime that we're in a traumatic moment, our body gets all these chemical reactions built up of adrenaline and cortisol, because we are made to do something. Primally, we are made to do something. But when we're sitting, usually alone, on our phones, and we're just scrolling to the next thing, all of these feelings, all this energy, all of these chemicals rise up, and we just keep on scrolling to the next thing. They never get any resolution or release out of our body. And if you had the ability to run, if you had, which is what I tell people to do, like, pause when you see something that hits you. I don't care if it's something that hurt your feelings because you were left out of a group, or whatever you saw that day, or some sort of national crisis. Turn off your phone and go for a run, because that's, your body needs to do that. But the truth is, you weren't made to do that, right? You weren't made to go running when you saw a crisis. You were made to help if it wasn't your crisis. And so that's a big thing that I tell people, which we're getting way off topic, but a big thing that I tell people is, the more the crisis is, the more important it is you stay off of the media, because that gives you more resources to actually care and do something about it. Watching it does not help.
Right.
All it does is take more power away from the people.
Well, when you think about turning on YouTube, Instagram, whatever, it's all based on, how can we trigger this person to get them to watch our thing? How can we make them angry? How can we make them whatever? I think the news, whether you're right, left, center, whatever, that's what it's all about, is how can we get this person feeling unsettled where they need to watch this thing, where we can build up that hate. And one of the things we always talk about in our program is just, when it comes to the news, you can sit in echo chambers all day and just hear the same thing over and over and over again. But if a news story is big, you're going to hear about it. You don't have to go look for it, right?
I tell everybody that.
And we always say, spend 5 minutes a day looking up the news. I'm not saying never look up the news. Do 5 minutes a day or 5 minutes a week, but don't be doing more than that, because you can get the story fast and quick. It does not take 4 hours of Fox News or CNN to hear that same news story over and over again. And, I kind of wanted to switch over to just kind of comparison culture. And when people are on Instagram, whether it's girls, I think about my wife. She is such an incredible mother to our 2 little boys. And when she gets on Instagram and she sees the mom who made the perfect sandwich and the perfect tray and the perfect, and then she feels terrible, and she's telling me all these things. I'm going, what are you talking about? This is ridiculous. You're amazing. And when she shut off that phone, how good she felt and how much peace she had. I think for me, talking about the porn piece, when men watch porn, they look down and they're like, is it supposed to look like that? Because I'm not, and just that comparison of, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not a manly man because my penis isn't 19 inches long or whatever. I hopefully they're not, that's neither here nor there. But the point of being, well, they're not enjoying it like I'm seeing on the screen right here.
Right,
Well,
right.
I'm not good enough. Well, I'm not the best mother. And just talk about when we turn off those phones, what that does to our minds, our bodies, our
Yeah.
spirit, everything.
Well, a term that I really have considered writing as my next book is life porn.
Mm.
Because that's what I think that it all is.
Mm.
It's all like basically we have the all of the components that go into porn, its psychological power over us. We have now put that into every single aspect of life. There's the life porn for relationships, the life porn for Valentine's morning, the life porn for my vacation, for my grandkids. That's a big thing I'm seeing with grandparents is they see everyone else with their grandkids and why are their families all perfect and they have issues and theirs, it is a lie. It is a lie, a lie, a lie, a lie. I mean, it is, and yet the power of those pictures and those videos is so profound that we believe them more than we believe the truth. And I mean, I'm not like, the most healthy human being in the whole world, but I can hardly, like, if I'm with a friend who's on a dating app and I'll just get a glimpse of it. I can't even tell you how. I mean, it's like, I can't stand when someone's like, oh, let's look them up on Instagram. I'm like, I cannot look. So this could say a lot about my own issues, but as healthy and secure and confident as I feel being like middle-aged woman in Tennessee, right? Who's as normal can be. And I don't think about how I look most of the time. Like, we're not made to be thinking about how we look. We're not made to be thinking about how good of a mom am I. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. Or how good of a wife am I? We're made to be enjoying and loving and serving in these relationships. That's what we're made for. And that's how we thrive. Like, if you got to go with your family out to a cabin in the mountains and you got to fish and hike and play board games all night without a mirror or a camera anywhere, you would not for 1 second think about, how do I look doing this? Right? Or does anyone else think, is anybody doing this better? That wouldn't even enter your consciousness. So these media platforms have made things enter into our human consciousness that we're not even made for. It doesn't work for us. And that's why we have such strong reactions, we meaning me, to, but how my kids' sandwiches look.
I know a lot of people listening are going, I want to spend less time on my phone, but they're nervous. The question they're asking right now is, okay, I want to work with Jenny, but does that mean I never get to use my phone ever again in my entire life? And I want you to just talk about what you do on a professional level when you work with people one-on-one and just taking them through that process. So what does that look like just in general, so they know?
I mean, so the truth is, never would we ever be having this conversation if everything about this technology was bad, right? It's a conversation, and it's a hard conversation because there are so many advantages. I want to use the word advantages and not benefits because I think the jury's still out what the benefits are, but there's definite advantages. And what the very, very big lie is that if you give up your addiction, right? And this is totally addiction talking. You give up your addiction, you lose everything. That is what the enemy of your soul wants you to think. And it is not the truth. The truth is, what's the truth? You give up your addiction. What do you lose? What did you lose, Emmanuel?
I lost fear, anxiety, anger. I lost panic. I could go on and on and on.
And what'd you gain?
Peace, I gained love, intimacy, connection, freedom is the biggest word. Absolute
So
freedom.
I don't even know, like, and that's
Mm,
the hardest thing to be able,
mm,
that what you're saying, that's how I feel
yeah,
about smartphones.
yeah,
And so it is, so it's not easy. It's not
mm,
an easy process to basically diversify your life, and you make it a little bit harder
mm,
in some ways, right?
mm,
You make it a little bit harder, but then that harder is actually something you can do.
mm,
Like right now, your life is easy and it's impossible.
mm,
No one's doing it well.
mm,
So harder is not the enemy.
mm,
In fact, we like doing hard things. You make your life
mm,
too easy and you start getting really
mm,
bored and getting into bad behaviors and like whatever. So all that to say, it is not, while it does take work and it is hard work and it is a process, you're going to get to keep every single thing you like in your life.
mm,
If you like it, you get to keep it in your life. If you don't like it, it's not in your life anymore.
mm,
And there's a powerful message out there that doesn't want you to know that.
mm,
So
yeah,
what I take people through is
mm,
basically the idea is, after 7 years of doing this work,
mm,
you have to have something, pick an aspect of your life that you want to see drastically improved.
mm,
One that I haven't had anybody do yet, but I'm looking forward to is, a lot of moms are not as fulfilled with this
mm,
dream of parenting that they thought it was going to be, and um, I would say, in my experience with losing my phone, um, the number one goal I had was a closer, more connected relationship with my kids.
mm,
At that point in time, my son had 4 more years left at home. My daughter, no, my daughter had 4 more years at home. My son had 2 more years left at home.
mm,
And I was counting the days before they left.
mm,
And my goal was, when they leave, I don't want to have any regrets.
mm,
I had regrets of how distracted I had been, how much I had not put them in the front. So that was like, I want to not have any regrets when my kids leave home.
mm,
And putting my phone down wasn't about putting my phone down. It was about putting them at the front and center of
mm,
my life. And what I feel like is really important is, it you can't be giving up porn. Your goal for life can't be giving up porn or getting out of pain. You have to say, I want to experience true intimacy
mm,
with my wife. Or it could be work. I want to see myself um, thrive in my work,
mm,
get better professionally. It could be health. So you
mm,
pick your area, because that's what's been stolen from us.
mm,
Is, I want to pick this thing that I want to see thrive, and I'm going to put away this thing that has done nothing but stolen from me. And in its place, I am putting this thing.
mm,
And so the goal is, at the end of those 30 days, you have something to show for it, not
mm,
just, I didn't have my phone. You
right,
have something else. This is where it fills in all the spaces of boredom you were talking about. We're
mm,
moving this thing forward. So I do a couple different ways. I have intensives that I offer where I
mm,
actually help people. I spend days with them and we set
mm,
things up and move things forward. I've helped people like do their whole house, like take that energy, and it's like I'm remaking my
mm,
whole house. Health stuff, work, blah, 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 whatever.
mm.
And then I also do an online, kind of through Zoom, or Doxy, or is the thing I use, where it's over a 60-day period. We meet for 6 hours and
Mm.
sort of coach you through like these things you're going to do in the times between.
There's nothing to lose and everything to gain. I mean, that's what it comes down to right there. And what
That's
you're doing
exactly right.
is incredibly powerful stuff, because we're running from something that's going on inside, whether it's the messy house, or it's the body that we don't want, or the relationship we're not feeling fulfilled in, or whatever that thing may be. And it's time to stand up, and it's time to handle what's going on inside. And Jenny,
Well,
I
and
just
the
wanted to,
more we run
yeah,
away from it,
yeah,
the more it becomes a bigger monster,
right.
because the only thing that's going to help it is us. right?
Right. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I just want to say thank you for coming on today and just sharing with our listeners, because this is important stuff. And if you're watching this, if you're here, you know what you need to do. And it's time to stand up to these problems that are going on. And the ways that you can reach Jenny, jennywiseblack.com, losethephone.com, reach out to her, set up that consultation call. Just find out what's going on inside, and then just take that step, one step at a time, to handling what's going on inside. Because like we said, there is nothing to lose and everything to gain. And so, Jenny, I just wanted to thank you for coming on. Is there any last words or anything you want to share before we go? Or
I'm just so proud of you, and I'm proud of what you're doing. And I'm looking forward to supporting you in the work that you are doing. So please just keep me posted, and I want to be a part of it. Thank you for including me today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Jenny. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks,
Take care.
everybody.